driving the conversation, making sense of the news. Welcome to this episode of Making Sense of the News with me, Njideka, Maduka. Now, the political atmosphere ahead of the 2027 general elections is already charged. So in this episode, we're going to be making sense of the ADC coalition, that is the African Democratic Congress coalition, because that's to this very moment, the talk of the town.
Making sense of the news with Njideka, Maduka is open to collaboration. Are you a thought leader or news source or simply passionate about national issues they want to feature in the podcast? Do connect. Send an email to njideka2015@gmail.com. Let's make sense of the news together, one headline at a time. Back to Making Sense of the News with Njideka, Maduka.
And so the launch of this coalition was like the biggest political headlines that dropped at the beginning of July. This coalition is positioning itself to take on President Tinubu in the 2027 election. Now, the launch was quite something, especially because there have been so much uncertainty around whether or not this coalition would even come together. Remember the time Pat Utomi, the renowned economist, was talking about coalitions and all that. And he kept mentioning Peter B. and Atiku Abubakar saying they were, coming together to agree on something. But with all of those talks, there was no real action. In March, some key political players, that is Atiku Abubakar, Peter B. and Nasir El-Rufai, and some other persons, held a press conference. During that press conference, a journalist asked if this was the coalition everyone had been talking about. And they said yes. But here is the thing. That gathering was mostly about opposing President Tinubu's controversial emergency rule in Rivers State. So it wasn't really clear if that affirmation was intentional or just offhand. I can't say whether it was a prepared response to the coalition question or something that was just given in response without serious preparation. But from that point, the coalition talk gained momentum. But after then, there was silence. Not much was heard or seen again. Intensive real action. Don't forget, prior to that press conference, El-Rufai, for instance, that's the former governor of Kaduna State, had already joined the Social Democratic Party, SDP. That defection raised eyebrows. Was SDP going to be the party that housed this coalition? It looked like it for a moment. But no other major figure followed El-Rufai to SDP. Later, people like Salihu Lukman, the former DG of the Progressives Governors Forum, confirmed that El-Rufai may have jumped the gun a bit with that move because nobody actually followed him to that party. Meanwhile, you had folks like Adewale Adebayo, who was the SDP's presidential candidate in 2023, who were already throwing shade, saying they weren't open to politicians who were just chasing power. Now, fast forwards, suddenly news broke out that the coalition had adopted the All Democratic Alliance, that is ADA, and they were working on getting it registered with INEC. So you can imagine how surprising it was when on July the 2nd, we heard at a major gathering that the Action Democratic Congress, that is the ADC, had become the coalition's party of choice. So the question was, what happened to the ADA, which was earlier announced? Well, according to the coalition leader, Musa Adu, registering the ADA wasn't moving fast enough, so they settled for the ADC for now. But he said they might switch back if the ADA registration pulls through. It's early days, so let's just hope this party hopping doesn't create legal headaches later on. INEC at the moment is saying that they have about 151 political associations are seeking registration ahead of the 2027 election. The rule is that application to register a new political party will have to be done at least a year before the general election. So it's still, I think the window is too much favorable to them being registered, but we'll wait and see what INEC does in that regard. But concerning the coalition, here is the real elephant in the room. Who is going to be the coalition's presidential candidate? Right now, there is no clear answer. The obvious choices are Atiku Abubakar and P2B. Both had strong showings in the 2023 election. Atiku pulled in 6.9 million votes under the ADP, and the B scored 6.1 million votes, running with the Labour Party. Atiku has been in this game since 1993 and is a former vice president. Obi, on the other hand, had his first presidential run just in 2023 and was Atiku's running mate back in 2019 election. And this is where things get tricky. Atiku brings experience and seniority, but Obi has a passionate, organic following with the obedient movement. Even though Atiku got more votes in 2023, many believe Obi may be the more unifying candidate for a coalition. At least that's what his obedient movement thinks. Personally, I think choosing Atiku might upset Obi's base and split the votes, which could hand President Tinubu a second term easily, especially if it turns into a regional contest that is North backing Atiku, South backing Tinubu. But if the coalition backs Obi, that could seriously shake things up. He has wide appeal and might win over the North if Atiku throws his support behind him. Either way, the coalition needs to pick a candidate soon to remove any cloud of uncertainty. Interestingly, Obi has already declared his interest to run, which kind of kills the rumor that he might be Atiku's running mate. You know, there was this rumor at the time, but he has dispelled that rumor. Now, all eyes are on Atiku. Will he step aside or throw his heart again in the race? He has already defected from the PDP, so we'll watch and see his next political move. The projection out there is that the ADC is being packaged for him. I mean, he's a strong force behind the ADC, and you have seen so many of his supporters, people like Dino Melaye, people like Adeli Mamodu defecting to the ADC. And the question will be, is this a sign that they are opening the door or announcing the coming of Atiku, who is like their principal? There had been that rumor that ADC is either trying to bring in former President Goodluck Jonathan to contest. And so another news came that Atiku is trying to be careful not to perhaps make his next move obvious because of this rumor of bringing in Jonathan. You can imagine how that would disorganize him. People who are looking for Jonathan think that Jonathan will serve only one term, because some of those people are looking for a southerner who will do one term. Let's not also forget Rotimi Amechi, who is the former governor of Rivers State, has declared his intention to contest under ADC. His involvement definitely adds a layer of complicity, and I'm wondering if it's not better to just speculate around Obi and Atiku, and whether his coming in doesn't complicate things. Another elephant in the room is the legality of the ADC's adoption by the coalition. Now, right after the launch, Njideka, who is the ADC's 2023 presidential candidate, raised alarm, claiming breaches in party leadership. According to him, Rafosu, who handed over the ADC to the interim team led by David Mark, wasn't even the legitimate chairman. Let's take a listen to what he said.
Dear ADC family and fellow Nigerians, it's with the greatest amusement that I watch the former Vice President Atiku Abubakar-led group announce their takeover of the national leadership of the African Democratic Congress. As is expected, I have been inundated with a lot of calls and messages seeking my reaction to the unfolding dramedy. The facts of the matter are as follows. The Atiku-led group are in some form of alliance with the former leadership of the party led by Ralph Wosu. The tenure of the Wosu-led executive lapsed on August 21st, 2022. Can you enter a man's house through the back door and declare yourself the landlord? These yesterday's men who represent a bad chapter in Nigeria's past have bought bad markets from a man who represents a bad chapter in ADC's past. Nigerians have watched in amazement as this group of mostly geriatrics shopped around for a party to prosecute their chopping must continue ambition. This further cements the opinion most hold that political parties in Nigeria stand for nothing and will fall for anything. They have told us that they are fighting for the rights of ordinary Nigerians and that they are on a rescue mission. But what is confusing to the Nigerians they want to rescue is that these men, made up of a former vice president, former governors, ministers, and political office holders, are the same people who have presided over the affairs of this nation for the past 4 decades. We have absolutely nothing to show for their decades of leadership, other than being seen as a nation divided by tribe and religion and thriving in mediocrity.
Now, he has since vowed to pursue the matter in court. So we're looking at that angle and see what comes out of it. There are other people who had also gone to court concerning this handover and whether it was constitutionally and legally done. Meanwhile, I have personally been curious about the chairmanship claim of Musu, given that Kachiku's presidential candidacy in 2023 was supervised under the acting chairmanship of Patricia Apashiki and recognized by the electoral body, that is the Independent National Electoral Body. There was this press release that Ralph Wosu had been suspended or is he expelled because he had completed his tenure, and the other persons in ADC deemed it fit to bring in an interim chairman. So if truly this was what transpired, can Wosu truly lay claim to the party's chairmanship? And was he the right person to hand over to the coalition? His leadership was said to have expelled Kachiku in 2022 prior to the 2023 election. If indeed Kachiku was suspended, how come INEC recognized his candidacy? Meanwhile, others have argued that the new interim leaders don't meet the party's constitutional requirements. They haven't been members for at least 2 years, and their regional placement don't line up with the succession rules. For example, Raffles, who is from the southeast, who's handed over to David Mark, is supposed to be replaced with a southeasterner, of which David Mark is not. This also applies to other leaders that had been named, including Rauf Aregbesola, who is the National Secretary, and of course Bolaji Abdullahi, who is the National Publicity Secretary. Now, Bolaji Abdullahi, who is the Publicity Secretary, has insisted everything is clear. But clearly, there is still a lot of work to do to make ADC a truly viable platform. And that includes making peace with aggrieved members and avoiding unnecessary legal entanglements. Because you know how some of these things go. Now let's talk about zoning. There has been talk that if Obi emerges as the coalition's candidate, he may have to agree to a single term to balance out the so-called North-South power rotation, and Obi himself has agreed to that. But here is my issue with that. Was there ever a real cross-party zoning agreement, of which APC or even ADC were not even in existence when it was made? Or was it among individuals of a political party? In this case, the PDP, when you look at 1999 and all the political arrangements that came with it, if indeed such an agreement existed, why did Atiku run and is still running for the presidency when the South is supposed to occupy the seats? Let's assume Atiku wanted to complete the tenure of late former President Musa Yar'Adua, who died while serving as a president from the North under the PDP. How do we explain the narration that Goodluck Jonathan, who is vice president to Yar'Adua, who is from the South, lost the 2015 election partly because another was supposed to complete the term of Yar'Adua? And so if Muhammadu Buhari of the All Progressives Congress, APC, was a product of that wrong being righted, why didn't anybody insist that Buhari should do one term, given that Yar'Adua had already almost completed his first term before his demise? So based on this logic, why is anybody continuously asking Obi question on whether he would do one term? And why is Obi falling for that? It's doubtful if the so-called zoning arrangement covers political parties, and what I've said so far puts a question mark to the narrative out there. I used to actually rationalize why Atiku continuously positioned himself to contest under the PDP, given that Yar'Adua did just one term or was almost completing his one term. So it was just rational for another to complete it, even though there had been that sentiment that the South was supposed to occupy the position. But now that he has even moved from the PDP, I wonder if he would still do one term. And under what basis will he be doing one term since he's no longer under PDP? There have been reports that he's also promising to do one term. How true that is not really clear. Now, why does all this matter? Because if the opposition truly wants to unseat the current leadership, forming a strong united front is their best shot. People in Obi's camp believe he won in 2023, but was rigged out, even though the courts have ruled otherwise. So we're not going to push that narrative that, he won the election and all that. Still, history shows that alliances can change the game. Remember how the APC was formed? That alliance worked. Finally, let's talk about the Nigerian people. No matter how strategic the coalition gets, they still need to win hearts and mind. The hearts of Nigerians. The ADC isn't new, but it's not exactly mainstream either. So if Nigerians don't trust the leadership or see them as a true alternative, it's game over. So, as we inch closer to 2027, all eyes will be on how united, how focused and transparent this coalition can be. The state of the nation is already pushing people to consider alternatives, and so the rest is up to them. That's it on this episode of Making Sense of the News with me, Njideka Maduka. So, tell me, what do you think about the coalition and all the developments around it so far? Do you think the ADC can oust the ruling party from power in 2027? Share your thoughts in the comments section. Now, if this episode resonates with you, please do share, start a conversation, ask questions, You can also listen and connect with me across platforms. Just visit linktree.ee/Njideka Maduka. linktree.ee/Njideka Maduka. I will see you in the next episode. Have a great time.
Thanks for listening to Making Sense of News with Njideka Maduka. If this episode made you think, sparked your curiosity, or gave you clarity, don't keep it to yourself. Share it. And if you liked your feature in the podcast or collaborate as a stakeholder, opinion leader or news source, do connect. Email at njidekamaduka2015@gmail.com. Let's keep making sense of the news together. We're headline at a time. Catch you on the next episode.
Driving a conversation, making sense of the news.